everyone. Welcome to MICE, the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo. I'm MICE co-director Shelley Paroline, and this workshop is called Cartoonist Bootcamp. Before we get started, I just want to take a minute to thank our sponsor for the program, the Elliott School in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. The Elliott School offers classes to people of all ages in comics, woodworking, sewing, yarn, book arts, drawing, painting, photography, and other crafts and fine arts. And thanks to our arts advocates, these major contributors who help sustain MICE, they allow us to grow year after year. MICE is produced by the Boston Comics Arts Foundation, a nonprofit charitable organization that funds comic arts festivals, individual artists, and educational programs for the greater Boston community. If you like what we're doing here, please consider making a donation today using the donate button in this session. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button labeled Ask a Question. Please use that button to vote up any questions you may have throughout the session. You'll also see that there's a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. All right. So, and if we could just have everyone introduce themselves, say where you're coming from, your ages, we'd love to hear more about you and who we're going to be drawing with today. All right. And finally, I also wanted to say that we're going to be streaming this panel on our Facebook page, and that is facebook.com/MICEXPO. And that is for audience members who would like to use the automatic closed captioning function that Facebook Live offers. All right, and one more fancy cool thing that we're going to do. If you would like to work along with us today, you can share your art with us through our MICE photo booth. So when it's time, we're going to be sharing a link to the photo booth at the bottom of the screen, and you can attach a file or also take a webcam photo of your work. You can send that in. Okay, you can go ahead. Yeah, that's how it looks like. There's just that take a photo option right there. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our instructor, Jon Chad. He was born and raised in Vermont, but now lives in Sacramento, California. He is obsessed with giant robots, screen printing, and bookmaking. Jon is also the author of books like Leo Geo, illustrator of 2 science comics from First Second Books, and the designer of pinball machines. Thank you, Jon Chad, and take it away.
Oh boy. All right, let me stop my screen sharing. All right, so everybody should be looking at me right now. Hi everyone, my name is Jon Chad. As Shelley said, I live in Sacramento, California. I've moved out here with my wife about a year ago, and I love comics, and I love teaching comics and talking about comics to all sorts of different people. So what we're going to be doing today is, just as the title says, this is going to be a cartoonist boot camp. Whether you've drawn comics before or whether you're just getting started, I want to equip you with some skills and tips and tricks and things to think about to just take your practice to the next level. There's this great phrase that one of my cartoonist friends, and when I used to teach at the Center for Cartoon Studies fellow teacher, Jason Luke, says, he talks about being in lane or out of lane. There's this idea that as cartoonists and as artists, sometimes we gravitate towards things that feel familiar or stuff that we've done a lot, and that is in lane. And sometimes it just takes a little push to get us out of lane, to think about something new, to try something with a new approach. So what we're going to be doing today is a bunch of short drawing exercises to think about different aspects of comics making, and then take those ideas back to the table. As Shelley said, you're going to have the opportunity to share work. There's a great phrase, one of the greatest teachers that I've ever had as a cartoonist is cartoonists as a greater community, going around to different shows like MICE and SVX, working at the Center for Cartoon Studies, and actually seeing what other cartoonists are doing has inspired and grown my work substantially. And so if you're following along and you want to share your work, I'd love to talk about it and show it with everybody else, because I think that there's a lot that we can learn from the little things that we all do, all the little, triumphs, the little successes, even sometimes the little mistakes that we make. We can all learn from each other and become better cartoonists. The last thing I'd like to say before we get started is that I truly believe in the depths of my heart that there's no wrong way to make comics. Everything that I'm going to provide you with today are just ideas. They're things to think about. I don't think that there's one necessarily right way or wrong way to make a comic. I think there's things that you can use to make a clearer comic, or something that, if you maybe put on the page, will lead to a less clear comic. But that doesn't make it a bad story. We're all just storytellers, and there's no wrong or right way to tell a story. So just keep that in mind, that if you find some way, some technique, some trick, some way of making a panel or a page that works for you in your comics making practice, that's amazing. All right, so I'd like you to grab your materials if you haven't done so already. Basically anything that you can use to make a mark on a page and anything that you can draw on. It'd be best if the paper was clear of previous marks. So if you have like your math homework, maybe use the back of your math homework where it's blank. Maybe not use a piece of lined paper because we're the ones putting the lines on the paper. But if that's all you have at your disposal right now, that's totally fine. It doesn't need to be a pencil or pen, but it certainly can be. I'm going to be using just a regular number 2 pencil with an eraser. I'm going to be using a ballpoint pen, and then I've got some crayons and markers in case we need them. So let's jump into our first drawing activity. So I don't know, Zach, are we looking at the paper? All right, awesome. So everybody grab your paper and shake out your hands. Shake out those drawing muscles. And what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you do a timed drawing. And a lot of these exercises are going to be timed. And the reason for that is because I think one of the things that is sometimes a barrier to us when we're starting out in cartooning or where we're learning different techniques and stuff is that sometimes we give ourselves too much time. Sure, if you keep on drawing the same thing over and over and over again, it will get better. But I'm a big believer in the idea that the page of comics that you will draw is always going to be better than the page of comics you have drawn. I'm a big advocate in moving on, making those mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and getting on to the next drawing. So I'm going to be timing you so that you have a little bit of pressure in order to complete a particular drawing. Let me pull up my timer. All right. So the first drawing that I'd like you to draw, and this might seem a little bit intimidating, is I would like you to draw a giant gorilla and a giant robot fighting on the Eiffel Tower. Now hold off before you start because we're going to give you 2 minutes to do this drawing. Think about those 3 crucial elements. We've got the giant gorilla, we've got the giant robot, and the Eiffel Tower. Now, all 3 of those things can seem very complicated, but in 2 minutes, you're not going to have a lot of time to draw them. So you might have to think about what is a more simplified version that I could use to draw these 3 things. All right, so we're going to start and go. So we've got 2 minutes on the clock, and we're trying to draw a giant gorilla and a giant robot fighting on the Eiffel Tower. What sort of shapes comprise a giant gorilla? What sort of shapes comprise a giant robot? When you're drawing, are you the sort of person that hones in really tightly onto one detail and then works their way out? Or are you somebody who draws big shapes and considers kind of the overall structure of something before you move in? You've got 1 minute and 25 seconds on the clock, so you've still got plenty of time. If you've been really focusing on one detail, like the brow of the gorilla or the hairy fist of the gorilla or the mechanical arm of the robot, maybe move on. Maybe think in larger, bigger, wider motions. We're at the halfway point now. Around 50 seconds left. If you've only been working on the giant gorilla and the giant robot, consider moving to the Eiffel Tower. Now, the Eiffel Tower, that's pretty complicated, right? You've got a lot of different things going on there. It has a very specific shape, but it's also got a lot of components. All right, we've got 30 seconds left. I know I've thrown you in the deep end, but just keep those drawing hands moving. If you've already finished, maybe add in a little bit more detail. You've got 15 seconds left. What's one last thing that you can put in to make it read more like the Eiffel Tower, a robot, or a gorilla? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, hands up, pencils down. All right, shake out your hands. You've been drawing really, really hard. Now, that might seem like a really complicated drawing to just throw at you with such a short amount of time. But there's something that we can kind of think about and learn from this experience. This exercise originally came from the cartoonist Ivan Bernetti, and he uses it in order to illustrate the point that when we're making comics and we're telling stories using pictures, we're not trying to always draw a perfect representation of something. One of the things that I think is a barrier to people who are just getting into cartooning is that they think that in order to tell the story that they want, they have to draw a perfect representation of something. Oh, my story takes place in a parking garage, one person might say. So there's no way I could draw my comic. Well, my story takes place in a shopping mall, and that's way too complicated. I could never draw that, and so I won't draw that comic. But when we're making comics, we're just trying to get across the idea of different things. You know, we're not trying to show a perfect parking garage or a perfect shopping mall. We're trying to get across the idea of a parking garage or a shopping mall. So Zach, can we take a look at one of the examples? So, you know, like in a cooking show, when someone puts the cake in the oven and they're like, oh, now put the cake in here for 2 hours. And then they immediately take out the cake because they've already put in one in the oven, a little bit of cooking show shenanigans. I've done the same thing. I ran through these exercises with my parents, and it was very interesting to see what they came up with. So this one that we're looking at right now, this is what my dad drew. And you can see that it's really rough, but there's a lot of really great ideas going on here. Right? You've got the general shape of the Eiffel Tower, and then you've got these two figures. And look at all the different things that my dad did in such a short amount of time in order to communicate the idea of gorilla and the idea of robot. With the gorilla, my dad is using these softer shapes, these more organic shapes, these circles, these oval structures. With the robot, my dad is using these hard rectangle structures. And in just using those two different types of shapes, we can already get across the idea of a gorilla and the idea of a robot. And for the Eiffel Tower, my dad obviously didn't know how to draw a perfect Eiffel Tower, but he was able to get across the general idea. He knew that it was big and pointy. He knew that it was wide at the bottom and short at the top. Is it perfect? No, but it starts getting across kind of the general idea of what the Eiffel Tower looks like. I think the really cool addition to this is that he added those like vertical shapes to be the beams, because he knew that that was a very integral part of the Eiffel Tower. Okay, back to our drawings. For the next drawing, I'm going to give you a minute. We're going to have less time, and we're actually going to be drawing the exact same thing. So I'm going to start the clock for 1 minute in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh no, Jon Chad, I hear you cry. That's even less time. That's true, it's half the time. So you're gonna need to make decisions about what is a more simple way to draw these three things in action. How can you make an easier version of a gorilla, an easier version of a robot, and an easier version of an Eiffel Tower? Maybe don't think of the Eiffel Tower as this series of interlocking beams. Think of it as a shape. Think of it as an A shape. You've got 30 seconds left. For the gorilla, if you were really getting in there and drawing a lot of details, on this version, I bet it's going to be more of like big old circles and a couple of spikes to indicate hair. For the robot, again, boil it down to its basic shapes. 15 seconds to go. You're not trying to draw a perfect version of these things. You're going to try to get the idea across. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, pencils down. Hands up. All right. Oh man, are we already looking at it? Zach, this is the version, this is what my dad did on the second go around. And you can see that he's made some different decisions, right? On this version, he has less detail in the Eiffel Tower, but those details are truer to what the Eiffel Tower looks like. You know, instead of having those vertical beams, he drew it as X's, and he drew it as more of an A shape. The gorilla has less detail. It's got this big bulbous body, but you can definitely tell that the gorilla is separate from the robot. Sometimes in comics, that's all we should be striving towards. You know, as long as our characters can look separate from one another and be distinct in their shapes, we can tell them apart at a distance. What sort of decisions did you make on the second drawing versus the first drawing? What sort of things did you simplify and make easier for yourself? All right, now surely you think we couldn't possibly do that drawing any faster, but we will. If you've already filled out your piece of paper, maybe flip to the back side or grab a new piece of clean paper. But I would like you to draw the exact same drawing, and this time, because I'm a big silly goose, I'm gonna only give you 20 seconds. All right? 20 seconds to draw a giant robot and a gorilla fighting on the Eiffel Tower, and go. All right, you really got to think simply now. What is the very core visual definition of a robot and a gorilla? What's the Eiffel Tower? Just get that A shape in there. Get those bulbous shapes for the gorilla. Get those square shapes for the robot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Done. That's it. Hands up. Pencils up. Shake out those hands. I bet there's steam rising off those drawing hands because they're so hot. Again, take a look at your drawing and think about what sort of decisions you made when you were doing that drawing. What sort of things did you simplify? Again, one of the things that I think stop people from cartooning or pursuing cartooning when they're just starting out is this barrier of, I'm not able to draw this, and so I'm not going to try to tell my story. And in 20 seconds, I guarantee you that what you have in front of you, even if it's very visually pared down, if it's very simple, I guarantee you it is starting to get across the idea of a gorilla and a robot fighting on the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, where's my dad's third one? I think it's up. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Oh my, bless my dad, right? And even some of these decisions I think are super smart, right? He's got the general shape of the Eiffel Tower. He's got these cross beams going across it. Look at the legs of the gorilla. This is such a simple decision, but having the curved leg of the gorilla versus the straight leg of the robot, you're starting to get these differences between those two characters. I guarantee you that if I took this and went into the other room to my wife and I asked her who is fighting on top of the Eiffel Tower, she would say some sort of creature and a robot, right? Maybe with 20 seconds, my dad is not able to get across the idea of a gorilla perfectly, but that's only 20 seconds. In a minute, he could do better than that. And in 2 minutes, he can do better than that, right? If this was a page of comics, we would have drawn almost half a page of comics over the course of 5 minutes. Okay. Whew. So before you lose that drawing energy, and I talk a little bit about some of the processes that I use to make comics, I would like you to kind of prep some stuff for the next activity. I'd like you to grab a piece of paper and some sort of mark-making implement, either a pencil or a pen, and we're going to make some shapes. And what I'd like you to do is try to make a shape based on an emotion. What I'd like to do is, instead of holding my pencil like this, like I normally do, I'm going to hold my pencil like this, because I'm not trying to draw, I'm just trying to feel. And I'm going to think of a feeling. And I'm just going to let my pencil kind of roam around the page and make a shape. So for example, I'm going to think of something angry, you know, and when I think of anger, you know, my hand starts to shake and tremble. I'm closing my eyes right now. I'm just letting my pencil move, and I'm just making this kind of angry shape. All right, that's not perfect, but it definitely looks scraggly and angry. So that's the sort of thing that I'd like you to try. And for the first shape, the first emotion that I'd like you to try to kind of channel is happy. I would like you to make a happy shape. When I think happy, I think of something that's soft, rounded. Oh, there we go. Something that's not too jaggedy, not too electric, not too excitable. Something nice and soft. All right. Next, I'd like you to make a shape that feels sad. Now, this can be different for different people. Some people might make a very small shape because when they feel sad, they feel very small. Some people might make a shape that's almost like it's dripping, like the shape itself is crying. That's good with my eyes closed. Some people, the way that they feel sadness, they might feel hard and rigid and as if they don't want to let anybody in. And so they might make a shape that's more like that. But whatever a shape feels that feels sad, there's no wrong or right answer to this. We're going to use these a little bit later. All right. The last one I'd like you to make is something that's excited, something that's just energetic, right? When I think energetic, I think of sun, I think of flowers, I think of lightning. I just think of something exploding out, something. There we go. Oh yeah, bam. This thing's blowing up, right? But maybe your version of excited is something more like fire, something that's like spiky at the top, right? Maybe your version of excited is something that's like something that's vibrating, right? All right. So we've got some calm, happy shapes. We've got some sad shapes. We've got some excited shapes. Sorry about that. And then we've got an angry shape. All right. We're just going to take this aside. We're going to take this and put it aside for later. All right. Next, I'm going to talk very, very quickly about the process that I use to make comics. Now, there's no wrong way to make comics. There's all sorts of different materials. So let me see if I got this right. Boop. Boop. Oh, wow, that worked. That was very seamless. Are we looking at my slideshow? Perfect. All right. So you can use anything to make comics. I don't want this to be a like, oh, well, this is the things you use to make comics. You can use crayons on napkins. You could use ketchup on the inside of a pizza box. You could use mashed potatoes on the sidewalk. If you can use it to make a mark, you can use it to make comics. For me, though, the tools that I use to make comics are moving towards the goal of being able to reproduce it. For me, comics are all about sharing. It's sharing my stories with other people and giving them to my friends and family. And the process that I use helps facilitate that. So the first thing I do when I make a comic is I write down a general idea of what I want the comic to be. If it's a longer book, then this is a longer document. If it's a shorter comic, then maybe it's a couple of sentences. But I don't consider myself a strong writer, but it's still important for me to get words down on the page so that I have a plan moving forward. The next phase that I do is I do thumbnails. Now, thumbnails, I hear you ask, are you talking about that little piece of bone on the end of your thumb? No. When we're talking about thumbnails in drawing, we're talking about like a small preparatory drawing, almost like a blueprint that can be used to plan out for a comics page. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why thumbnails are super important in a little bit. But for me, thumbnails allow me to make mistakes early so that I don't make them later on in my final page of comics. Drawing comics for me is a process of figuring out like what the composition of something is going to be. And by planning out that composition on a smaller scale, I'm able to make mistakes early on and then have a better final version later. I then take those thumbnails and I scan them into the computer and I put my word balloons because the relationship between lettering and images is really important to me. When the lettering and the images get too close together, they can conflict with one another and start to create points of visual confusion. It's almost as if you took your favorite page out of a book. You took a page out of Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, and you removed all of the punctuation and all of the spaces between the words. Everything in the book would still be there. It would just be harder to read. Now, again, I don't think that that's wrong in a comic. I just think it creates a certain effect, and that effect can be confusion. Next, I'm ready to move on to my final page of comics. You can use all sorts of different paper to draw a comic on, but I use a paper called Bristol board. It's a harder, thicker paper, and I use a smooth version, so it's actually smoother than regular copy paper. I use a pencil and an eraser to draw my comic page based on the thumbnail, the blueprint that I made previously. Again, at this stage, I'm able to make mistakes and make corrections. I know that I have you on a timer for these exercises, and I'm forcing you to not correct your mistakes and to just go, 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 go. But when you're working on your actual page of comics, you have a little bit more luxury of me not being over your shoulder, and you can draw something like a hand or a foot over and over and over again. I'm terrible at drawing feet. I'm terrible at drawing horses. I'm terrible at drawing hands at times. But so I allow myself to make those mistakes. Next, I ink my page of comics. Even though some people call this the tracing stage, for me, I'm still making a lot of decisions. But I allow myself to make mistakes and correct them. Now, it's harder at this stage because I have to use whiteout or something. But I'm basically thickening up my lines and making it pure black and pure white so that it will reproduce really, really well. You can certainly make comics with pencil, but for me, I like the strong black ink lines. I then scan it into the computer and I clean it up and I color it. Now, not all comics, let me stop sharing. Not all comics are in color. Not all comics are in black and white. That was just the process I use. Oh, I'm a liar. I had another slide. While there's many ways to make a comic, if you want kind of a great primer, a great like kind of starter marching orders for how you should approach a comic page, I would encourage you to remember PI. Pencil your comic, ink your comic, and then erase your pencil lines. Just those 3 steps are going to give you a really nice, clean comic that you can photocopy at a library, at your school. Maybe a parent could take it into work, and then you could be giving out to your friends, and bam, you're a published comic artist. Now, you could also make a comic just with pencil. Sometimes they might not show up well on a photocopier, but that's okay. I have plenty of books on my shelf that I made just on train rides that are just for me. There's only 1 copy of the Headless Giraffe story that will ever exist because it was drawn very lightly and cannot be photocopied. And that's perfectly fine. But if you're interested in sharing your work, I would encourage you to think about that end step, that reproduction phase, and think about darker pencil lines and think about maybe inking the comic. All right. So now we're going to jump back into, I've been talking long enough, we're going to jump back into drawing with our next drawing activity. And the next thing we're going to talk about is drawing character emotions and emotive characters. I want you to think about your favorite stories, your favorite movies. It could be books, movies, video games, anything. And if you think about some of the most dramatic moments, one of the things you'll find in common is that the characters are emoting. They're acting, they're reacting to what's going on around them. Imagine in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker gets his hand cut off. He doesn't go, no. He goes, nah, right? Screaming to the heavens, and then when Darth Vader says, sorry, spoiler, when Darth Vader reveals an incredible secret to him, Luke starts crying. He's like, that's not true. That's impossible. Can you imagine how that scene would have looked if Luke was not emoting? If Luke just had a straight deadpan face? Now, why this is important in comics is as we're telling our stories and we're trying to get across these moments in a story that are scary or exciting or happy, it's important for us to have our characters react like real people. If our characters don't react to things as they happen, it's going to make the reader wonder whether they should be reacting. If a giant hole opens up in the earth and a dragon comes up that's spitting candy and your character just has this deadpan face that's like, okay, we're not going to relate to that character. We're going to think, oh, why is this character so bored? Is this dragon something I should be afraid of? Now, with that being said, character emotion is one of those things that I think a lot of cartoonists, as they're starting out, get intimidated by. Oh, I can draw a smile and a frown, but there's some complicated emotions I could never draw. But let's take a look at some emotions and how we can use kind of the building blocks of the eyebrows, the eyes, and the mouth in order to create this wide variety of emotions. So what I'd like you to do is just draw a bunch of circles in pairs of 2. We're going to make some eyes. And let me know at any point if I am off the screen. All right, perfect. I'll give you another second. Stay hydrated. All right, let's start out very simple. I'm going to give some pupils and a mouth. Right? That's pretty straightforward. It's a nice happy emotion. I'm going to give 2 pupils and a downturned mouth. That's great. We're looking at somebody who's sad. 2 dots, open mouth. This is somebody who's maybe more surprised, maybe more scared. Right? This is someone who's maybe bored, disinterested. And you can try these out along with me, or you can just start playing around with different emotions. This one's more like gritted teeth, maybe someone who's scared, maybe someone who's nervous. Right? Like a little bit of a shaky mouth, someone who's concerned or maybe a little grossed out. And we can keep on doing this. But what we can also do is we can start playing around with our eyebrows. On their own, eyebrows can start to put in different emotions. Right? Just with the eyes, with no mouth and the eyebrows, we're starting to get something that's angry. With some upturned eyebrows, we're getting something that's a little more concerned. With straight eyebrows, this looks like someone who's focused or someone who's worried. One eyebrow down, one eyebrow up. We've got someone who's maybe questioning, someone who's confused. But we can start playing around and combining these 2 things in order to get some more complicated emotions. Right? So here we have a happy person. But what happens when I give them some angry eyebrows? Now we have like some sort of diabolical genius, some sort of supervillain who's going to use molasses to coat the city. Right now I have someone who's a little sad. If I give them upturned eyebrows, oh, they look really depressed. They look really too bad. Here I have a surprised person. I'm going to give them eyebrows just over their eyes. And they look surprised, right? They still look surprised or maybe worried or something. But if I raise those up, now they look really surprised. So we can also think about these things in terms of like volume, almost like a volume knob, right? Like here's someone who's questioning. They're not sure. You just said, I have access to unlimited soda pop. And this person's like, I don't know. Maybe you raise that eyebrow up a lot and maybe you put a line under the eye so they're kind of squinting. Now this person's really skeptical. They really don't know what's going on, right? This person who's worried, now they're really worried. This person who's like grossed out, now they're like enraged, right? They're shaking with anger. So you can see how just by using a combination with nothing else on the face, with just the eyes, the eyebrows, and the mouth, we can get a wide range of emotions. And some of these emotions are really interesting, right? Like, I don't even know what I would call this one. Like shocked, scared. Oh, oh, this one with like a little bit of a half smile and the eyes. This is like someone who's just like, oh, shucks. No, I'm not the greatest drawer in the world, you guys. So go ahead and either on this same piece of paper or on a different piece of paper, we're going to draw some expressions. And all we're going to do is we're going to be drawing the face of a character. Now, this could be a character that represents you, or it could be a character that you've drawn many times before. It could be, an animal character that you have. It could be a character from a TV show, movie, or game that you really like. But we're just going to be focusing on the face, specifically the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose if you want, and the mouth. We're not going to focus on anything else, because if we can get acting within just that range of the face, then we can get our acting going on throughout the whole body. What I'm going to do is I'm going to describe a scene that your character encounters. And what we're going to do is we're going to have like around a minute, 75 seconds to draw what your character's reaction to that scene would be. Now, I don't want you to think about how you would react unless you were drawing a character that represents you. I want you to think about how your character would react. And there's no wrong or right answer. All right, so let's see if this works. The first expression I would like you to draw is your character gets a present for their birthday. Your character gets a present for their birthday. And I'm starting the timer now. How does your character feel about this present? Are they happy about getting this present? Are they sad about getting this present? Are they worried? Are they confused? Have they never gotten a present before in their life? With this exercise, you're not trying to draw as much as the gorilla and the robot on the Eiffel Tower. So you have a little bit of time to maybe erase something, maybe try it a second time. Maybe you draw the first face and you don't like it. 30 seconds left. Also think about, kind of the volume knob of your character's emotion. Is your character a little happy about getting the present, or are they very happy about getting the present? All right, we're coming up to the end. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, hands up. All right. For the next drawing, I'd like you to draw the exact same character. And I'd like you to draw your character opens the present, but it's empty. Your character has just gotten this present for their birthday, but now they open the present and find out that it's empty. I'm putting 75 seconds on the clock and start. And this is where we can start to get different character emotions based on how you think your character would act. Is your character surprised? Are they sad? Are they confused? Do they know that their friend is a real jokester and this is in their nature to joke you like this? So is it a funny joke, or is your character laughing? Having characters that have believable emotions and that can emote and connect with our reader is super important. If all of our characters think the same way and react to situations the exact same way, that's not going to be, it's going to be harder for our reader to distinguish the characters apart. All right, we got about 25 seconds left. If you have time, you can put in a little bit more detail, such as hair, chin. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're done. All right. So the next drawing that we have is, this is later in the day. Later, your character is taking a walk and an alien lands and tells your character that they've won the space lottery. Oh, well. What a wild day your character is having. And I'm putting time on the clock and start. How does your individual character react to this moment? Is your character excited that they've just won all of this space money? Are they absolutely terrified that they've encountered an alien? Are they confused because this is all so much so quickly? Alien space lottery? Is your character grossed out by the alien? Maybe the alien's like just like a big slug. Slugs are beautiful, but sometimes they're gross. And what's the volume knob on this emotion? Is your character a little afraid, or are they very afraid? Maybe raising up those eyebrows, making the mouth wider would really help. All right, we got 12 seconds left. We're coming in for the landing. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beep, 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 beep. That's it. All right, last drawing. Your character has returned home, but now there's a dragon that has bust out of the floor, and the dragon is spitting out candy at your character. How is your character going to react to this new happenstance? And 75 seconds on the clock, and go. Again, is your character upset that there's a dragon busting through the floor of your home? Is your character happy? Is this dragon a trusted friend? Is the character excited to see candy? I mean, I've got a huge sweet tooth. Maybe your character has a sweet tooth. Is your character sad because, oh, I just fixed the floor. I like my apartment or my home to be nice and clean, and I just don't like this. Is your character upset by that? You got 35 seconds to go. Is your character grossed out? The dragon's spitting candies. Does that mean the dragon's barfing candy? Ugh. And characters might react differently from one another. You might have two characters in a room and they react completely different to a certain scenario. But drawing how that looks is really important. All right, we're coming in hot for the landing. Last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beep, 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 beep. I can hear the beep on my end. I just realized that you all can't. All right, shake off your hands. That was some good drawing. Why I think this is important is to just build up those muscles of how can I have my characters reacting in a way that will make my story more, will connect better to my reader. You know, if we have a moment that's scary and none of the characters are acting scared, it's going to be hard for me as a reader to feel scared. But if you have a character who's got their hands in the air and their mouth is wide and their eyebrows are up, and they're going wackadoo, then I'm going to be able to connect to that. Let's take a look. Actually, are there any questions?
No questions, John. Carry on.
Roger. Let's take a look. Again, let's see what this is my mom. This is Mom Chad. And I gave her the exact same prompts that I gave all of you, right? So we have a character who just got a present. They're really happy, right? We can see in the eyebrows, the eyes are glowing. The mouth is this big upturned smile. That character is not a little happy. That character is very happy. And then that second one, it's maybe my favorite drawing that my mom's ever done. She's got those kind of eyebrows that are slightly tilted down. The mouth is downturned. That character looks confused and sad. And look how even the hair is kind of drooping down a little bit. Then we've got a character who's surprised of the space alien, and that hair is just shooting up, right? That character is so excited. The eyebrows are up, the mouth is wide, and the hair is shooting up. We can see how surprised that character is. And then we've got a real mixture of emotions with that last one, right? We've got those downturned eyebrows. So maybe the character is mad or frustrated that the dragon is there. And then maybe because of that curvy mouth, it maybe feels like they're disgusted or weirded out by the candy that's being thrown up. So there's a lot of different ways that you could have drawn this. But what's important is to just think about what is your character thinking in that moment and how can you express that? and to realize that that's not as difficult as it seems. It's simply a combination of different facial features to come together to form a face. So now I'd like you to grab that drawing, those shapes that we did earlier, because we can have characters emoting not just in how their faces look, but in also how they're drawn. And sometimes, when we're used to drawing things realistically all the time, we can kind of lose track of the idea that the way that we design characters can also help express how they look. We can take a happy shape and use nice soft shapes to draw a happy character. We can take this kind of excitable shape, draw this kind of monster guy, and he looks excitable, right? We can kind of take this sad shape, give it a chin. Oh, give it some sad eyes, right? Oh, I feel bad for creating this person. They're really sad. Or like angry. I don't have to follow this exactly. I can say, okay, the sharpiness is the hair, kind of at this big chin right here. And we can get this kind of angry look like this. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through rapid fire some of my cartooning tips and tricks. And I'm going to do this through paper slideshow. And again, these are things just to consider, but can certainly help in taking your comics to the next level. So the first thing that I'd like you to think about is consider putting gutters in your comic page. Now, what are gutters, I hear you cry? Gutters are that space in between the panels. And what that does for our eye is it gives our eye a chance to break and rest so that we don't get overwhelmed by the story. When people start making comics, my little brother used to do this all the time, is that he would just draw like essentially a tic-tac-toe board, and he would fill it with these super dense drawings of these stick figures fighting. And they were beautiful drawings, but it made the comic harder to read. If he had separated them by a little bit of space in between the panels, it would have been a lot easier to read. So tip number 1, consider putting gutters in your comic. Tip number 2, try to keep your lettering clear. What a lot of people do is that if they're drawing a panel, they'll not consider the letters in the panel, and they'll draw a person in the middle, and then they'll draw a word balloon. They'll be like, I will fill that with the words, and they'll start filling it with words, and they'll run out of space, and so they'll have to make another word balloon, and another, and before you know it, you just have this cloud of word balloons that are crowding a character. Where it would be much easier to have a character on the side here saying something. So I would encourage you, if clear lettering is something that you're looking for, to consider writing your letters first and then putting the word balloon around it. If you put a word balloon and you say, this is the space where the letters will go, you run the risk of the word balloon either being too crowded or too light. So think about that. Tip 2.5, because it's also about lettering, is to try out using expressive lettering, right? When I normally write something, this is my cat, I'm writing it with a nice even handwriting. I should write larger. But if I write my letters expressively, this is my cat, suddenly we read that word balloon differently. This is my cat. Suddenly that word feels shaky. Maybe that character is scared. You can have the expression on the face, but also in the word balloons. Right? Hi. Hi. The only thing I've changed about these two drawings is that I've given this one a spiky word balloon, and suddenly it feels as if the word is being shouted. Hi. Right? This one feels sadder. This feels drippier. I didn't change any of the ways that I drew the lettering. I just changed the word balloon, and I suddenly have this different sound to the words. Sound is one of my favorite things about comics. It makes absolutely no sense. We look at these lines on paper and suddenly we hear voices in our head and we hear sounds, and it's all through the way that those words look. So tip 2.5 is to try out using expressive lettering. If your character is excited to say hi, try out a different way of writing that word. Tip number 3 is to think about your character's silhouette. If you look at any of the great cartoon characters, we can identify them just based on the silhouette. Screenshot this screen and you can take a look later, but in all of these, we can see distinct shapes being used. One of the things that I run into when I first started making comics is that all of my characters looked the same. They all had the same basic structure and they all had the same shoulders, the same head shape. If you're always using circles to make characters' heads, try using a square, try using a triangle, try varying your character's heights. Look around, your home or your room or your digital classroom, and you're going to see people that are all different shapes and sizes. And you can reflect that in your comics by just using different shapes and heights in order to make your characters. Having characters with different silhouettes is going to make your comic easier to read because as your reader goes through the page, they're going to be able to very quickly identify who your characters are. Tip number 4 is the thumbnail. I can't say it enough. I think thumbnailing is a really great way in order for you to plan out a comics page. I know plenty of creators who go straight to the page, and that's great. But for someone like me, I do get very nervous about making a mistake. And if I make that mistake early, it's easier for me to correct it. So if I was to say make a page about a boy slipping on a banana peel, and I was to thumbnail it, I would maybe draw a box and then maybe say, okay, we have a shot of the boy walking, and then we have a close-up shot of the banana peel, and then we see the boy's foot coming down on the banana peel, and then we have the boy slipping, right? And even something like that, a really quick sketch can help me plan out what a page might look like. But I might look at that and say, oh, that's not exciting enough. I think it should be more dramatic when he slips on the word balloon or slips on the banana peel. So I might make a second version when instead of having 2 panels, I have 3 panels. And I have the banana, and I have the banana and the foot coming down, and then the foot hitting the banana peel, and then slip. Right? And these took me like what, 13, 15 seconds to do. With thumbnails, because I'm doing them fast and loose and really rough, I'm able to blast through them very, very quickly. The last tip I have is to think about Emanata. And you might be thinking, well, what's that? Emanata is the effect in comics, and we've all seen it before, when a shape or a form or a type of line is being used to represent something that's not there. If I draw a face like this, and I draw this, what is that expressing? Maybe anger, frustration. Is there actual smoke appearing above this character's head? No. When I draw a character like this, and I draw a light bulb, is an actual light bulb appearing above this character's head? No. This character has not slipped into the light bulb dimension. This is what we use to indicate the concept that someone has an idea. And there's all sorts of different things like that, right? If someone's mad, there's the steam coming out of their ears. When someone's nervous, you've got the sweat drops. And if anybody actually sweat like this, I would be very concerned. If they came off in huge fist-sized globules, that would be very disconcerting. If we have something like a hot cup of coffee, these lines indicate that it's hot. If I have a bag of garbage, though, these lines could indicate that it's smelly. So this sort of stuff can be used in conjunction with one another to create some really fun effects, and it can strengthen the acting in your comic. All right, I know I blasted through these, but Mice has put together a handout of some of my stuff that has a lot of comic making tips about silhouettes and Emanata and character shapes, and so you can download that and check that out. I know we're pushing up against the end of the block, so I would love to tackle some questions or look at some drawings.
John, we have both.
Oh, okay. Yes, please.
What would you like first? Some questions?
Oh, I want to look at these drawings.
Let's look at the drawings.
Gosh. Okay. I'm looking. Okay, I am loving this drawing. Okay, we got gorilla and robot on top of the Eiffel Tower. And I love, and see, this is a great example of what I was just talking about. Look at the Emanata around where the gorilla is fighting with the robot, right? That kind of spiky Emanata. In our minds, that indicates battle, conflict, something clashing together. But it's not like actual lines are flying off their bodies. I really love the detail of the French flag that really hits home that it's the Eiffel Tower. But even without it, this cartoonist did a really good job in capturing the general silhouette and presence of the Eiffel Tower. That's a great one. Let's do another one. Oh, this one's great too. And this is again, I can tell at 50 paces what I'm looking at, because the shape of the Eiffel Tower is so distinct. It even has the curved out feet at the bottom there. The gorilla and the robot are so extraordinarily different. We got the hard, inorganic shapes of the robot and the soft shapes of the gorilla. Again, I'm a big fan of giant robots, and I basically tricked you all into drawing giant robots for me. And we got eye lasers going on, and there's even a word balloon that has the spiky lettering, or the spiky word balloon shape. I'm really loving this. This is like hitting all the bases for me. All right, let's do another. Oh, this is good. Oh my gosh. This is really phenomenal. we got the cross beams of the Eiffel Tower, and we got hard shapes versus soft shapes. The background, just putting a couple of clouds has really helped the drama of this drawing, right? This one feels like it's taking place in the air, and it's so much more dramatic because of it. Let's do another one. Okay. Oh my gosh. This first one where the gorilla is as big as the Eiffel Tower punching the robot is like totally doing it for me. I love it. And then the other one is really good. The shading really helps distinguish the gorilla. And something I'd like you all to pay attention to is at the bottom of the one on the right, you have that very thick, dark line. And doesn't that give so much depth to the drawing, everyone? Doesn't that make it look like one of the legs of the Eiffel Tower is further back? And then you have those kind of bushier, like plant shapes, like the trees that surround the Eiffel Tower. And that pushes it into the foreground. That one just has so much depth. All right, let's do another one. Ooh, we got some emotions here. Oh, we've got someone that's super happy. Oh, she's so happy. Oh, they're so nervous. Look at the lines in between the eyes, right? I equate that a lot with stuff that I've seen in like manga, but that really sunken, like almost I'm like gonna be sick, like, oh, I'm so scared or I'm so nervous. In the third one, the line under the eye, I think, is doing a lot of work. You, again, imagining the volume knob, whoops. If you imagine that drawing without the line under the eye, I think it would be less successful and it would feel less intense than the line under the eye. That's amazing. Are there any more? That's the last one? Well, then I will say that I love that last drawing as well, especially because the ears, I think, add a lot of like acting and body language to it. All right, so we have a couple questions, I hear.
We do.
I think we have time for a couple, like.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Ponders asks, do you ever use the character's position in the panel or the location on with the viewer in relation to the character to affect the emotional impact? I like this one because it's about getting that emotional impact.
Absolutely. If we can see on my screen, I have definitely many times drawn something where a character is small and they are having a very big thought. like just the feeling of them being pushed down and small in the panel can accentuate that feeling of sadness. Likewise, I've drawn panels where, and sorry that these are so, oh, hello. I've drawn people that are so excited that they're coming out of the panel, And earlier I was saying that when the words crowd the characters, that can make it feel as if it's it's confusing, but we can use that to our advantage. If we want a character that's, feeling scared or anxious and overwhelmed, here they are, they're hugging their knees, right? They could be absolutely surrounded, by words pushing against them. And that could be a really effective panel. So long answer, short question. Yeah, I do. I definitely do use that. I think about, that feeling of feeling small or feeling big, I think are the first two things that come to mind. Thank you so much for the question.
Yeah, Catherine is also kind of looking ahead to making her work and asking about time management. Are you a big believer in pulling all-nighters to finish a comic, or taking your time, or giving yourself deadlines? What does the time frame look like when you're working on a short comic, for example?
Great question. My biggest piece of advice is something that my friend and cartoonist Alec Longstreth told me years ago, which is to time yourself. It feels boring and it might feel like pressure, but time yourself at a comfortable pace making a page of comics. When I was a screen printer, I used to draw for an hour after every day at work. And I had big dreams. I was like, I'm going to draw all night after I get home from work, because I was all jazzed on being creative and pulling screens all day. But it was tough. Pulling screens was hard. And I was tired, and I only had about an hour in me. And I found that with an hour every night, I could do like 2 pages of comics a week. And knowing that about yourself is really empowering and important, I feel, because when someone comes to you and says, hey, Catherine, was it? We really love your comics and we'd love to have it in an anthology. Can you do 4 pages in the next 2 weeks? If you had a pace like me, then you could say, yeah, great, I can do 4 pages in 2 weeks. Or, if they say, can you do 8 pages in 2 weeks? You might say, no, I'm not quick enough to do that, and I'm not willing to push myself past my limits. Now, with that being said, sometimes there are exceptions. I think, as Shelley said, I have worked in the pinball field. I am very passionate about pinball, and one time I was working on a game, a Jetsons game that I did the art package for, and I definitely spent all-nighters, but that was because I love pinball so much and I loved doing the art so much. So sometimes I'm willing to make concessions, but in terms of your own personal health at the table, I would encourage you to time yourself, find that comfortable pace, and then just work appropriately from there. Right. Is there one more quick one?
I wonder if it's a quick one, but we do have another question, so let's go to it. And Seth asks, how do you balance a comic storytelling with keeping its pages clearly readable? Is there an ideal ratio of word balloons to panels on a page?
Ooh, I don't. I heard someone once say that 3 sentences in a word balloon feels like too much. And I'm inclined to believe that. I'm not a big believer in rules, but that's something that I think I've subconsciously kind of tried to apply to my work, is that I try not to have in a panel more than 3 sentences in a word balloon. Whether that means I have to split up into a separate word balloon, that at least keeps the reader's eyes moving throughout the panel. But in terms of that balance, this is a big part of why I thumbnail and why I do that extra stage of scanning them into the computer and adding the words in, because that allows me to, the words and the pictures start to have a conversation with themselves. And I start to move around the words and move around the pictures until I strike that balance that visually feels comfortable to me. Am I trying to create something that does seem stressful, that does seem claustrophobic? Then maybe that density is more. Am I trying to find something that's more peaceful and open? Then maybe that density is less. I always take a moment and I take a breath after I finished thumbnails and I've gotten that balance right, to kind of zoom out and look at the forest, not just the trees, and kind of look at the overall flow of a story. Do you have one page where it feels balanced, but overall it's just like it's much more dense with type than the other pages? maybe it's worth thinking why that is and whether it is dense with type because of a reason or not. And if it's for a reason, if there's a purpose behind that one page in relation to everything else being particularly dense with type, then go for it. But if there's no reason, then take that moment to pause and think about how things could maybe be redistributed so that over the course of the entire story, 8 pages, 4 pages, whatever, it has a more even flow to it. Great question.
That's really great. Thank you so much, John. That was really inspirational.
Oh, thank you. This was really fun to draw. And I'm so glad that people got to share work and we got to learn from each other and not just
It's incredible. Yeah. So thanks to everyone for coming. To order John's books from Paper Asylum, which is a local independent comic shop, please find the links on our website or clicking the button on the bottom of the screen here to buy John's books. This session has been a part of the month of Mice, a month of free comics programming, including panel discussions and workshops. If you like this workshop, you could check out the Hero's Journey in 8 panels with Summer Pierre. That's next Sunday at 4 p.m. For a full list of sessions, please visit micexpo.org or click that button again down there. And you can also check out our fundraising raffle where you can win cool prizes like some sweet art pens from Staedtler and fancy art drawing paper from Strathmore. Now stay tuned to watch our creator showcase, and this is a virtual exhibition floor where you can discover dozens of brand new self-published comics.